Good morning, Life Point Church. Welcome in for another day. Happy Wednesday. Today, in 1780, a very strange thing happened, which I actually didn't know about until I read through this lesson. So, today's Day of Darkness. That sounds very scary, but it's actually quite interesting. It was New England in the 1780s, and all of a sudden, about midday, about noon, it went completely dark. The people didn't know what was going on. They had no idea. You needed a candle just to be able to see what was going on outside, according to the people who wrote about it in their diaries. You couldn't even see what was going on. You needed a candle for light outside at noon. Animals were confused. The night birds started singing. The frogs started chirping. And then eventually everything just went dead silent. And it was eerie, as it was described by many people in that day in their journals. They had no idea what was going on. They were so afraid that they threw together last-second church services. People left their jobs and ran to the church, and they began to pray, and they began to repent, and they had revival on this day because it was suddenly dark, and they had no idea why. They made the assumption that it was God's judgment for something, and they began to pray. Now, today, we actually have experienced something similar recently in California through the forest fires. Because what they didn't know, because in 1780 news didn't travel very fast, was in Canada, and we found this out many years later through research, there was a very large forest fire. And the smoke from that fire traveled down toward us and covered Maine through almost to New Jersey with smoke and with fog, so that it ended up causing this darkness on this day. The way we found this out was scientists working in the Canadian forests were checking the tree rings, and they found burn marks in some of the tree rings, and they equated the time. They were able to walk the time back to that time in 1780. That's amazing. But whatever the choice was, whatever what happened that day to cause that darkness, it terrified many people. The Bible talks about 3 instances when darkness covered the earth. The first was before God created light. It was covered in darkness, and then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. There was a second one in Egypt when the children of Israel were trying to ask Pharaoh for permission to leave, and the plague of darkness fell on the Egyptians, and there was light in Goshen. So there was darkness in certain areas, but the Israelites still had light. I've always wondered how that one worked. And then there was the time when Jesus was on the cross. After he said, "It is finished," there was that great earthquake, and the souls began to arise from the grave. The good people walked around. It was like a resurrection. But there was darkness on the earth from 12 to about 3, just utter darkness. Darkness is a time when we have a chance to stop, to slow down. We're not distracted by what we see, and we can reflect on what's going on in our lives. Ephesians 6 verse 11 tells us to be wary of the fruitless works of darkness, but instead to expose them. Because when we're faced with darkness, it usually symbols something wrong, something going wrong, something not doing what it's supposed to do. So it's our job as a Christian when we are faced with darkness, not to involve ourselves with it, not to get involved with the sin that is causing it, but instead to expose it. How do we expose it? We stay connected to the cross, and we are never afraid to tell the truth. Sometimes the truth will set you free. If you will face that darkness and speak the truth over it, if you've got darkness in your mind or darkness in your family, and you know it's there and it's hard to deal with, speak the truth and be set free today. So on this day of darkness, I want you to try to shine the light of Jesus into yourself and into your family, so that together we can walk in the light as he is in the light. God bless you today.